When my stepmom told everyone I was a burden who should have stayed in the foster system, I didn't argue. I just stood there, pretending her words didn't sting. But on my 18th birthday, everything changed. Her face dropped, her voice cracked, and for the first time ever, she went completely silent when the lawyer revealed a truth she never expected. My parents had left behind a hidden $500 million trust, and I was the only heir. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Mia Carter. I was 17 when everything in my life turned upside down. Losing my parents so suddenly felt like losing the ground under my feet. One moment, I had a warm home filled with laughter, late-night dinners, and two people who loved me more than anything. The next moment, I was standing in front of a casket, wondering how the world could keep moving when mine had stopped. After their accident, I became the responsibility of my stepmother, Vanessa Carter. She had married my dad a few years before, and while she smiled in front of him and acted sweet at family gatherings, I always felt something cold beneath the surface. When he was alive, she never said anything directly to me, but the way she looked at me sometimes made me feel like I was taking up space she didn't want to share. When he died, she stopped pretending. Vanessa treated me like I was something she had been forced to drag into her life. In public, she acted like she was doing me a favor by keeping me. She hugged me in front of neighbors, told people she was trying her best, and played the role of the grieving widow caring for her husband's poor orphaned daughter. But as soon as the door closed, her smile vanished. Behind closed doors, she acted like my presence annoyed her. She made me feel like I was an unwanted guest. She criticized everything I did, the way I dressed, the way I talked, the way I cried. If I sat too long in the living room, she told me I was in her way. If I ate too slowly, she said I was wasting her time. She moved me out of my own bedroom and into the small attic space, so she could use the room for something useful. I didn't argue. I didn't have the energy. I felt alone every day. I didn't have anyone to turn to, and I didn't want to reach out to friends because I didn't want them knowing how bad things had become. So I did the only thing I knew. I kept my head down, kept quiet, and waited. I didn't know what I was waiting for, but I hoped something in my life would eventually change. I just didn't know that change would come in a way neither of us expected, and that the secret my parents left behind would flip both our worlds upside down. Living with Vanessa felt less like staying with family and more like staying in someone's house where you weren't really welcome. She made it clear in small, sharp ways that I wasn't supposed to feel comfortable. The first thing she did after my dad's funeral was take over my bedroom. She didn't ask, she didn't explain. She simply told me she needed the space for her new plans and pointed me toward the narrow attic staircase. I slept up there on an old mattress that smelled like dust, but I didn't complain. I knew complaining would only make things worse. She controlled everything around me, even the tiniest parts of my daily life. She took away most of my clothes and left me with things she said were appropriate for someone living off others. She watched what I ate and sometimes skipped buying groceries altogether, telling me to learn to manage with less. If I made myself a sandwich, she acted like I had committed a crime. I learned to eat fast, quietly, and only when she wasn't nearby. School became another place she tightened her grip. My parents had enrolled me in a great private school, one they were excited about because I loved science and had dreams of going to college someday. But Vanessa changed that without a second thought. She moved me to a crowded public school, saying the private one was too expensive for a child who doesn't contribute anything. When I asked her why my dad's insurance couldn't cover it, she shut me down so fast I never brought it up again. In front of other people, she played the role of the struggling but noble stepmother. She told neighbors and family friends that she was doing her best to fix the broken orphan girl and help me adjust to reality. They believed her because she said it with a sad smile and a soft voice. Everyone praised her, called her strong and kind. No one saw how she rolled her eyes at me the moment they walked away. I didn't fight her, because deep down I knew I couldn't win. I didn't have anyone else to turn to, and I didn't want to give her a reason to push me out completely. So I kept my thoughts to myself and stayed quiet. I spent evenings in the attic doing homework with a flashlight when the bulb burned out because she said replacing it was unnecessary. I learned to move silently around the house so I wouldn't bother her. I learned to hold back my tears so she wouldn't accuse me of being dramatic. Every day I counted down the months until I turned 18. I didn't know what would happen then, but I told myself I just had to make it that far. I had no idea that the future waiting for me was much bigger than anything I imagined, and that the life Vanessa tried to control piece by piece would slip right out of her hands. Ethan, my stepbrother, was the one person I thought might care about me after my dad died. When he still lived at home, he wasn't warm or close, but he was never cruel. He mostly kept to himself, busy with school, sports, and friends. I always hoped that maybe one day we would get along better. But after he left for college, he barely called home, and when he did, his conversations were short and rushed. He never asked about me, never checked how I was doing, and never noticed the changes happening in the house. It was like I had become invisible to him. Vanessa used his silence as another weapon against me. Whenever she sensed I was feeling lonely, she twisted the knife a little deeper. She would sigh dramatically and say things like, "Ethan doesn't come home because you make everything uncomfortable," or, "You pushed him away just like you push everyone else." I didn't argue. I knew Ethan leaving had nothing to do with me, but hearing those words over and over still hurt. They made me question myself, even though deep down I knew she was lying. What I didn't understand at the time was how carefully Vanessa had been shaping the distance between us. Whenever Ethan called, she made sure I wasn't in the room. If I tried to speak to him or send a message, she told me not to bother him and made it clear my presence was unwanted. She kept me out of every conversation and every decision. Over time, it created a wall so thick that Ethan and I had no chance of forming any kind of bond. He grew more distant, and I felt more alone. I didn't blame Ethan completely. He had no idea how things were at home. Vanessa knew how to make herself look innocent, and she always told him everything was fine. She told him I was coping, that I needed space, or that I was moody and didn't want to talk. He believed her, and I couldn't fault him for trusting his own mother. The only thing I wished was that he had looked a little deeper, or at least asked me directly once in a while. But he didn't, and I didn't expect him to. I knew I wasn't really his family in his eyes. With Ethan gone and Vanessa controlling everything around me, the house felt even colder. I didn't feel like a member of the family. I felt like someone they were obligated to keep around, like a task they wanted to finish so they could go back to their normal lives. Vanessa made sure I never forgot that. She reminded me constantly that I had nothing of my own and that I should be grateful she hadn't sent me away. She treated me like a burden, and eventually, I started to see myself that way too. Every night in the attic, I told myself that I only had to get through one more day, then another, and then another. If I could just survive until I turned 18, maybe I would finally have a chance to breathe. I didn't know what kind of future was waiting for me, but I hoped it had to be better than the life Vanessa kept me trapped in. I didn't realize that everything she built, every lie, every manipulation, would eventually come crashing down in front of her. I first noticed something strange the day a well-dressed man showed up at the house while I was coming home from school. He carried a briefcase and kept looking over his shoulder, like he didn't want anyone to see him there. When he stepped inside, Vanessa closed the door quickly, almost as if she wanted to shut me out along with the outside air. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he was a friend or someone from her work. But then he started coming more often, always at odd hours, always when she thought I wasn't around. Whenever I walked past the living room during those meetings, I could hear low voices and tense whispers. I never heard full sentences, just sharp words like access, balance, and documents. Once, when I stopped on the staircase because the voices had grown louder, I heard the man say something about legal restrictions. Vanessa hissed at him to keep his voice down, and I hurried away before she caught me listening. As days passed, the meetings became more frequent. Sometimes they sat in the kitchen with papers spread out on the table. Other times they met in her bedroom with the door shut, and I could only hear small bits of the conversations through the walls. I wasn't trying to snoop, I just couldn't avoid it. The house was small, and their voices echoed through the hallway. I heard words like liquidation, beneficiary, and deadline, but none of it made sense to me. I had nothing worth managing. I didn't even have money for lunch some days unless I found spare change in old coat pockets. Vanessa became more nervous as these meetings continued. She started jumping whenever the doorbell rang. She double-checked the locks every night. She paced around the house on phone calls, whispering sharply, ending every conversation the moment I walked into a room. If I asked who she was talking to, she brushed me off, saying it was adult things and not my concern. The more she tried to hide, the more obvious it became that something was wrong. One afternoon, I accidentally overheard more than I should have. I was on my way to the kitchen when I heard the advisor say, "You won't get legal access without the primary beneficiary present." Vanessa's voice turned cold and frustrated as she whispered back, "She doesn't need to know anything. Just tell me what I have to do." I froze. For a moment I wondered if they were talking about me, but I pushed the thought aside. I didn't have anything they would need access to. I didn't even own the old shoes in the attic without Vanessa reminding me they came from her money. Still, the idea lingered in my mind longer than I wanted it to. Something about the urgency in her voice made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain. I didn't ask questions, though. I knew she would explode if she caught me listening. So I went back to the attic and told myself it probably had nothing to do with me. I didn't know then that every one of those meetings was about my parents, their estate, and the fortune she thought she could steal if she played her cards right. I had no idea she was quietly trying to take control of something she believed belonged to her. I thought Vanessa just wanted to control me. I didn't know she also wanted to control the one thing I didn't even know existed. The day the letter arrived, I found it on the kitchen counter, half covered by a stack of magazines. I wasn't sure if it was meant for me or Vanessa, so I picked it up carefully. The envelope looked official, with a law firm's name printed in sharp black letters. Before I could open it, Vanessa rushed in, snatched it from my hands, and tore it open like she already knew what it was. Her eyes moved quickly across the page, and I watched the color drain from her face. She tried to keep her expression calm, but her fingers trembled. She folded the letter slowly, almost painfully, and set it down as if it weighed 100 pounds. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat and strained. "We have an appointment next month. It's about your parents' final estate review. You're required to be there when you turn 18. I didn't understand why she looked so shaken. To me, it sounded like a normal legal step. But to her, it was something else, something that made her suddenly nervous in a way I had never seen before. She avoided my eyes and walked away quickly, leaving me standing there confused. I didn't think about it much after that. I just thought it would be a simple meeting about paperwork. Vanessa, however, changed overnight. She started watching me more closely, as if she didn't want me out of her sight. She grew sharper, angrier, snapping at me for the smallest things. If I washed a dish too loudly, she accused me of trying to irritate her. If I walked into a room she was in, she told me I was hovering and needed to find something useful to do. Her mood was so unpredictable that I tried to avoid her as much as possible. As the date of the appointment got closer, she became cruel in new ways. She told me that the lawyer was only calling me out of pity, that my parents probably left nothing behind, and that I shouldn't expect anything. She said things like, "Don't embarrass me when we go there, and try not to cry or act desperate." She wanted me to feel small and uncertain, and it worked. I started worrying about every little thing, thinking maybe I really didn't belong at that meeting. A few days before my birthday, I discovered that my birth certificate and ID were missing from the small box where I kept them. I searched the attic, the kitchen, and even my old room, but they were nowhere. When I asked Vanessa about them, she shrugged and said, "Maybe you misplaced them. It's not my job to handle your things." But I knew I hadn't lost them. She was hiding them on purpose. Without those documents, I wouldn't be able to prove my identity at the meeting. I spent the whole night sitting in the attic, trying not to panic. I didn't know what to do or who to ask for help. Vanessa moved through the house that night with a strange mix of confidence and fear, like she thought she had won something but wasn't sure how long it would last. I felt trapped, unsure of what the lawyer really wanted from me or why Vanessa was acting like everything depended on that meeting. All I knew was that the closer my birthday came, the colder she became. It felt like she was trying to break me down before something important happened. I didn't realize then that the truth she was so desperate to hide was the very thing that would end her control over my life forever. The night before the meeting felt heavier than any other night in that house. I tried to keep to myself, staying in the attic and hoping Vanessa would leave me alone. But she called me downstairs with a voice that already sounded angry. I walked into the living room slowly, unsure of what she wanted, and the moment she looked at me, I could tell something inside her had snapped. She didn't bother hiding her bitterness anymore. She stood in front of me with her arms crossed, her face tight and cold. "You really think tomorrow is about you?" she said, her voice low and full of contempt. "You're a useless, broke orphan who should be grateful I didn't throw you out the moment your father died." Her words hit like a punch, but she didn't stop. She walked closer, pointing a finger at me. "Everything you have is because of me. Don't forget that." Without this roof, you'd be on the streets. I didn't say anything. I knew arguing would only make things worse. But my silence seemed to infuriate her even more. She grabbed the back of a chair and slammed it down harder than necessary. You don't belong here, she continued, her voice rising. And after tomorrow, things will go back to the way they should be. You'll leave this house soon, Mia. You don't fit anywhere. Not with me, not with Ethan, not with anyone. Hearing those words out loud felt like someone pulling the floor out from under me. I had always known she didn't want me, but hearing her say I belonged nowhere tore something open inside me. I tried to keep my face steady, but my throat tightened and my eyes burned. I turned away slightly so she wouldn't see the tears gathering, but she noticed anyway. Oh, don't start crying, she snapped. You always act like you're the victim. You should be thanking me. At least I kept you here. She made it sound like keeping me in the attic and controlling every part of my life had been an act of kindness. I wanted to run back upstairs, but my legs felt glued to the floor. I stood there trembling, trying to swallow the pain, trying not to give her the satisfaction of watching me fall apart. When she finally walked away, muttering to herself, the room felt silent in a way that made my chest hurt. I went back to the attic and let myself cry quietly into my pillow. It wasn't just sadness, it was exhaustion. I was tired of feeling unwanted, tired of her voice echoing in my head, tired of trying to survive in a house that felt like a cage. For a moment, I wanted to give up on the meeting altogether. I felt too small, too crushed, too unsure. But as I wiped my face and tried to breathe steadily, something shifted inside me. I realized she wanted me broken for a reason. She wanted me scared, insecure, and silent so I wouldn't show up tomorrow with confidence. Maybe she was hiding something. Maybe tomorrow mattered more than she let on. I lay awake most of the night listening to the creaks in the ceiling, thinking about the years I had spent shrinking myself just to get by. Eventually, I made a quiet decision. Tomorrow, I would go to that meeting. I would show up, even if I felt terrified, even if she tried to stop me, even if I didn't fully understand why it mattered. I wasn't strong in the loud, bold way some people are. But I had a different kind of strength, the quiet kind that comes from years of enduring things alone. And for the first time, I felt that strength rise inside me. I didn't know what waited on the other side of the morning, but I knew I was done letting Vanessa control how I saw myself. Tomorrow, I would finally face the truth, whatever it was. Walking into the lawyer's office the next morning felt like stepping into another world. Everything was quiet, polished, and calm, so different from the tension I had just left behind at home. Vanessa walked beside me, but not a word came from her. Her jaw was tight, her hands stiff, and she kept glancing around like she was afraid of what might happen. I sat down slowly, trying to steady my breathing. The lawyer, Mr. Harlan, greeted us politely. He was an older man with kind eyes, and he looked at me with a softness I wasn't used to. Mia, he said, today we will finalize the estate review your father prepared before he passed. Vanessa straightened in her chair and forced a smile, pretending she had everything under control. But the moment the lights dimmed and a video screen turned on, the room changed. My father's face appeared on the screen. I stopped breathing for a moment. It was him, alive, smiling gently, speaking in the warm voice I had missed every day. The sight of him made my chest tighten, and I felt tears gather without warning. Vanessa stiffened beside me, but said nothing. Mia, my father said in the video, if you're watching this, it means you've turned 18, and I'm incredibly proud of you. His voice shook me. It was as if he was speaking directly to me across time. I created a trust for you, he continued, worth $500 million. Your mother and I wanted to make sure you would always be protected, especially if anything ever happened to us. Vanessa's head snapped toward the lawyer, her eyes wide. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. My father went on. This trust is locked until your 18th birthday. Only you can access it. Not a guardian, not a step-parent, not anyone else. It belongs solely to you. Vanessa finally found her voice. There must be some kind of misunderstanding, she said quickly. She's still a child. She can't manage. The lawyer raised a calm hand, cutting her off. Mrs. Carter, the instructions are legally binding. You have no rights to the trust. My father's voice continued. I did this because I know there may be people who would try to take advantage of her. Mia, I want you to live freely, safely, and without fear. This is your inheritance. Your future. The video ended. The room fell into a heavy silence. I stared at the screen long after it went black, trying to process what I had just heard. $500 million? A trust made just for me? And locked to protect me? Vanessa's chair squeaked sharply as she stood. This is ridiculous, she snapped. She's irresponsible. She doesn't deserve. Mrs. Carter, the lawyer said firmly, you are not part of any financial arrangement. You were never listed as a guardian with financial authority. You have no access, no claim, and no ability to contest this. Her mouth opened and closed like she couldn't believe someone was telling her no. She looked at me with a mix of fear and anger, two emotions I had never seen from her at the same time. Mia, the lawyer said gently, everything your parents left belongs to you. Today you officially become the sole heir. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel powerless. I didn't feel like someone taking up space in a house where I wasn't wanted. I felt seen. And Vanessa, who had spent years trying to control me, suddenly had nothing left to hold over me. Mia stood in the lawyer's office with her hands clasped tightly, trying to keep herself steady. Everything inside her felt heavy, but she didn't let it show on her face. After hearing the truth about the trust fund and watching Vanessa panic, she knew she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She had spent years being spoken over, pushed aside, and treated like she had no voice. But this time, she had come prepared. She reached into her bag and took out the small folder she had discovered a few days earlier. The documents had been hidden inside one of Vanessa's drawers, buried under piles of old papers. Mia hadn't gone looking for anything, but once she found them, she immediately realized how serious they were. They showed emails, signatures, and conversations Vanessa had tried to arrange to gain access to her parents' money. Mia didn't fully understand every legal term, but she knew enough to realize it was illegal. Instead of confronting Vanessa alone, she quietly handed everything to the lawyer before the meeting. Now, the lawyer opened the folder and began reading through the files. His expression changed from professional to stern. He asked Vanessa if she wanted to explain the attempts to claim money that was never hers. Vanessa's face turned pale. She looked around the room for a way out, but there wasn't one. Every word on those pages was clear and undeniable. She tried to speak, but the lawyer cut her off, telling her that her actions could lead to serious charges. Mia didn't smile or look proud. She didn't feel the need to rub anything in. She just stood there, quiet but strong, watching everything unfold. For the first time in her life, she wasn't the one being questioned or blamed. She wasn't the one being yelled at or controlled. She was simply being heard. The room felt different now. The power that Vanessa always used to control the house, the insults she threw, the way she acted like everything belonged to her, none of it mattered anymore. All the lies she had built around Mia were falling apart in front of people who finally saw the truth. Mia felt her heart beating fast, but it wasn't fear this time. It was relief. It was strength she didn't realize she had until this moment. Vanessa kept trying to defend herself, but her words sounded weak. No one believed her. The lawyer made it clear that her actions couldn't be ignored, and that Mia had every right to protect herself and her parents' legacy. Mia listened quietly, letting the truth speak for her. For the first time, she stood tall not because someone told her to, but because she finally believed she deserved to. She didn't shout, she didn't argue, and she didn't let anger control her. She just let the truth stand on its own. And that alone was enough to change everything. Mia walked out of the lawyer's office knowing her life had changed, but she also understood there were still practical steps she had to take. The house she grew up in, the one her parents had loved and cared for, was still under Vanessa's control. Mia didn't want another fight, but she knew she had to protect what her parents left behind. With the lawyer's help, she filed the necessary documents to remove Vanessa from the property. It wasn't out of revenge. It was simply the legal and rightful action. Within days, Vanessa was ordered to leave the house. She packed her things with a quiet anger, but she couldn't say anything. The law was not on her side anymore. When Mia returned home, she felt a strange calmness. For the first time, the house felt like hers again. Her parents' photos looked different now, almost like they were watching her with pride. She walked through the rooms remembering the warmth that used to fill the place. It wasn't fully healed yet, but it finally felt possible. A few days later, Ethan came back. He had heard about everything, Vanessa's failed plans, the trust fund, and the way Mia had stood up for herself. He walked in with guilt written all over his face. He told her he was sorry for leaving her alone with a woman who had no intention of taking care of her. He admitted he ignored obvious signs and should have stayed by her side. Mia listened calmly. She accepted his apology because she knew holding on to anger would only slow her down. But she was also clear that things couldn't go back to the way they were. She told him she wasn't someone who needed rescuing anymore. She wasn't a helpless girl who had to swallow insults or hide in her room. If he wanted to be in her life, it would have to be with respect and honesty. Ethan nodded, understanding he had a lot to make up for. With Vanessa gone and her life stable again, Mia began thinking about what to do with the opportunities she had been given. She remembered the loneliness she felt growing up, especially after her parents passed away. No one had stepped in to guide her or comfort her. She didn't want other kids to feel that same emptiness. She reached out to local organizations and started arranging scholarships for foster teens. She wanted them to have the education, support, and hope she barely managed to find on her own. It wasn't about showing the world she had money. It was about giving others the chance to stand on their own feet, just like she had finally learned to do. Mia felt lighter every time she helped someone. She knew her parents would have been proud. Their legacy wasn't just the wealth they left her. It was the strength to rise above everything that tried to break her. And now, she was finally using that strength to change lives, starting with her own. A few weeks after everything settled, Mia drove to the cemetery early in the morning. The sky was pale, and the air smelled fresh with dew. She walked slowly between the rows of stones until she reached the ones that held her parents. Kneeling down, she placed her hands gently on the cold marble and took a deep breath, feeling a wave of both sadness and relief wash over her. "I'm here," she whispered, "and I want you to know I'll take care of everything. I'll be careful with the gift you left me. I'll use it the way you would have wanted." She felt tears prick her eyes, but they weren't just tears of grief anymore. They were tears of release, of finally carrying a weight she had held silently for years. Mia thought about Vanessa, about the years she had spent being belittled, controlled, and dismissed. She realized now that the anger she had carried wasn't just about being hurt. It was about the power Vanessa had tried to take over her life. Watching Vanessa lose that power, watching her schemes fail, had been more satisfying than anything money could give her. That was the true reversal, the true justice. It wasn't about revenge in the cruel sense. It was about reclaiming what was hers and standing firm. She looked around the graves, taking in the quiet stillness of the place, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The fear and anxiety that had followed her every day for years seemed smaller now, like shadows that had finally lost their shape. She understood something important. Her parents had always believed in her, and she had finally found the courage to believe in herself too. Mia promised herself she wouldn't let anyone define her worth again. She wouldn't let past pain dictate her future. She would live with strength, grace, and purpose. She thought about the foster teens she had started helping, the scholarships she had arranged, and the lives she could touch because she had learned to stand tall. That feeling of helping others gave her joy in a way that wealth alone never could. For the first time, she didn't feel like an orphan in the world. She didn't feel unwanted or forgotten. She realized that all along, people like Vanessa had underestimated her. They thought she was fragile, weak, or dependent. But standing here, surrounded by the memory of her parents and the life they had prepared for her, she knew the truth. She was capable. She was strong. She had survived everything and come out stronger. Mia rose from the graves, brushing the grass from her hands. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs. Each step she took away from her parents' graves felt lighter than the last. She was healing. She was rebuilding. She was free from the shadows of the past. And for the first time, she truly understood that she had never been unwanted, only underestimated. As she walked back to her car, the sunlight touched her face, and she smiled softly. The future felt open, full of possibilities, and entirely hers to shape. She was ready,